Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Fillon and Nick Stevens. And tonight we have a pretty busy episode for an off-season podcast, as we have news about minor league player housing for 2022 and beyond, as major league teams are now going to start covering that cost. In addition, we have the Orioles instructional fall league roster, which we'll take a quick dive into before turning our attention to arbitration-eligible players on the Orioles roster and our off-season predictions. We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor & Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business. It was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful, historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. Now, as some of you may know, we do have a community on Patreon, and every time we get new members of the community, we like to shout them out here on the podcast. So Bob's here with our latest member shout-out.
Yeah, Yoni Finkelstein, welcome to the team. You're straight to AA, past all the low minors, right up there. So appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and our patrons can continue to look forward to more daily content over the offseason with some prospect recaps and the occasional bonus show. On our main podcast show tonight, we've got a lot of big news to get into. One of them is news that was broken by Jeff Passan on Sunday night, which is that Major League Baseball teams are going to start providing housing for minor league players in 2022. At the time of the report, some of the details were not exact, whether or not that would come in the form of a per diem or if minor league affiliates would pay for the cost of housing and then be reimbursed by the major league team. So there's still a lot of things we don't know. And as we said on Twitter, there's still a lot of changes needed for players who don't make very much money. But one step here in the right direction. So I'll just start with Nick on this news.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking to see and pretty awesome. I mean, it's a big victory. It's troublesome that we have to tout like finding a home for minor leaguers is like big news. Like this should have been standard many years ago. But you hear just so many horror stories about minor leaguers, cramming 6, 7, 8 guys into a 1-bedroom apartment. And these guys are expected to be at the ballpark for all day during baseball season. And then at nighttime, when the game's over and you're done with everything, like to not have a place, a reliable, steady place, like lay your head down at night, like that's just basic, a necessity for life. And I mean, it's a good win. It's a good first step for a lot of these minor leaguers. And I'm happy that a lot of these guys get to spend their paychecks on food, on their families and other life necessities. And they don't have to worry about housing, hopefully, as long as all this goes off without a hitch. But it's a huge win for these guys. And I'm very excited for all these minor leaguers that don't get those big bonuses and have to live paycheck to paycheck. And, like I did tweet that there are a lot of other issues, but this is a big win for a lot of guys. And I'm happy for them.
Yeah, my favorite tweet I saw was Rainey Jazirli. He said, "Congratulations to Major League Baseball on meeting the labor standards of 1957," which is true, but it's better late than never, I guess. It's pretty cool for these guys, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner, obviously, but not just for the humanity aspect, but just because the strategic advantage. I mean, you're going to get better performances, better development if these guys are just well rested, well fed, and ready to just focus on the task at hand. So great stuff to see. Hopefully, the new CBA can continue to iron out some of these kinks, and next maybe they double the salaries of all the minor leaguers.
It'd be nice to see. I mean, minor league housing, and this is where I'll just throw in a personal note, was that my parents were host families in Hagerstown for a number of years before that team was eliminated last year. It's a tough thing because it's not just the cost of finding housing, but in a lot of cases, putting your name on a lease for a place that you might not live in the entire 6 months of your lease. So it's the little things like that come into play for players that can be tough. So this is big news.
Especially this year in the Orioles farm system where everybody played like at least 2 teams.
Yeah, and at least like you're lucky if you're with the Orioles organization, Bowie, Aberdeen, Delmarva are fairly close together, not close enough to like get one apartment if you get moved up across 3 levels or anything like that. But like, imagine if you're like a Giants minor leaguer where your AA team is down the road from me in Richmond and your AAA team is out there. All of your other minor league teams are on the West Coast. Like that's a whole nother like separate issue for a Giants minor league podcast there. But like it's big. And like you said, like with trades, guys get traded during the season. If you're a prospect that gets traded, you have to learn this new organization. You're still fighting for a job. And now, you're like, if you're switching across the coast, you don't have to worry about housing anymore. And that's such a big issue. And, just especially I feel like now, all of, a couple of us are building homes and looking for new homes, and we know what a pain that is. And so if you're a minor leaguer who's making $10,000, $12,000 a year, like how many of these places would even agree to have you sign a lease because you don't make enough money? And so it's good. Whether it's the stipend to go off and find your own housing, or if it's apartment complexes that these teams build, it's a good win. So good job, Owen. Actually, no, I don't want to pat Major League Baseball on the back for this win because they don't deserve that. But I just reiterate, good job on these players, and for all those people who spoke out, the other reporters like your Emily Waldens of the world and such that keeps speaking out, advocates for minor leaguers that keep speaking out on these issues, and hopefully more is to come.
And I did want to throw in this blurb from the end of Passan's article because it does affect the Orioles, that some Major League players, even though the MLB Players Association does not necessarily protect minor leaguers, at least the ones that are on the 40-man roster, several Major League players took to wearing a wristband distributed by advocates for minor leaguers that included the inscription #FairBall. One of those players was Trey Mancini.
Always a great guy on every level.
So we'll look now at the 2021 fall instructional camp roster for the Orioles, which was announced today. Fall instructional camp will take place down at the spring training complex in Sarasota. The big themes really here in this case are players who played in the low minor leagues, extending their seasons this year, and then several players who either lost the entire year or a good portion of the year to injury will have a chance to continue their rehab down there. So whether that's someone like DL Hall or Joey Ortiz that end up losing significant chunks of time, those guys will be down there. Carter Baumler, who was out with Tommy John surgery, will be there. Heston Kjerstad, and what was really the best news of this for me, will be there after as he tries to recover from myocarditis. But then you also have several players from the Dominican Summer League going, a lot of players who were in Delmarva late in the year, and then some of the top prospects that were at the higher levels like Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson, who ended the season in Bowie. And some of the fast-rising pitching prospects are going there as well, looking really from Felix Bautista at the top of the minor leagues down to guys like Zach Peak, Zine Pinto, and Brandon Young, as well as Carlos Tavera, a 2021 draftee. So this is kind of an interesting mix. And Nick, you mentioned this right before we went on air that Rock Cabato has tweeted that there will not be games as part of the instructional league.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like there's no games, even like backfield games against other teams, like we saw, I think last year. After the alt site experience, I know a lot of guys ended up in Sarasota and they played some backfield games. And someone, I can't remember off the top of my head now, just remembering this, but we found some videos on YouTube of some of the at bats and some pitchers getting work in. But it looks like we're probably not going to get that. I know it's close to the media, it's close to the public, so it looks like it's strictly like instructional camp. It's education. It's on and off field education as far as baseball goes. And for, like you mentioned, guys like DL Hall and others, and Joey Ortiz and Elio Prado's on this list. That's great to see as well. Heston Kjerstad. It's just about getting these at bats after long layoffs, long injuries, trying to work back. So a lot of interesting names on this list. But I tweeted this out, and I legitimately mean this. I would pay a lot of money to watch Felix Bautista and Sammy Basayo go up in some battles. So Eric Garfield, if you're listening and you got some cameras out there and you want to get that, send them my way.
Yeah, he's secretly setting up the cameras that are live feeds at a constant stream right now. Now, yeah, like you said, it's not really any games here. It's pure instruction. And a lot of these guys like DL Hall and Ortiz, I'm assuming they're basically just rehabbing. But even so, it's still cool to be able to see them healthy enough to do that in that kind of setting. Because you notice Taron Vavra's not on there, so he must not be on the rehab stage yet. And it's cool to see the guys from the Dominican team come over stateside for the first time. And it shows who they think the top three guys are. It's Basalo, Michael Hernandez, and Anderson De Los Santos. So great stuff all around. Hopefully we will see the repercussions of this camp next season.
Well, and I think that the really important point for the players coming up from the Dominican Summer League is to be around players that have more experience, because that was one of the things that we heard about being such a big advantage for Gunnar Henderson last year in his time at the alternate site, especially, but then again at fall instructs, it's that exposure to older competition. So, not only would a Felix Bautista, Samuel Basallo matchup be entertaining to watch, but it would probably end up being part of the development that benefits Basallo. Face some older pitching, and really after putting up a good year against teenagers down the Dominican Summer League, this would help him really be prepared next year for the Florida Complex League.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you have Kyle Brnovich on this roster. That's going to be a really good arm for these young kids to face the 2021 draft picks. And you guys like Kobe Mayo's facing these older arms. Zach Peak, you mentioned, will be a good one too. Garrett Stallings is on this list. Adam Stauffer is really interesting. I mentioned that. I think when Bob ran off, I think he grabbed some water or something right before the show, and I mentioned his name. That's an interesting one. And Zach threw out the idea, like, is he Rule 5 eligible, which I think he is, but I know that's your guy, Bob, so
wish I knew. I'm not sure.
But yeah, that's an interesting name out there on the list too. But there are definitely some advanced arms who are healthy that will definitely go a long way in helping some of these younger bats progress. And we saw the success that this team had at the alt site last year during the pandemic. So this instructional camp roster, I think, is a fantastic roster that will pay off huge dividends down there in Sarasota.
Yeah, and a guy like Drew Rom on the mound, that's pretty cool. And I did notice Ryan Higgins, who was drafted as a third baseman, is listed in the outfielder section. I don't know if that's just, doesn't matter. He can play all over, but interesting, I thought.
So I just checked, and Stauffer is indeed Rule 5 eligible according to Fangraphs.
Interesting. I don't think he'd be at threat of being taken, but he's got a good arm. I think hopefully he stays in the organization because I think he'll make a mark in the bullpen in the next few years.
I could see him as like a Gray Fenter type, maybe. A team does take a flyer on him, but he's back in like 3 weeks once the spring training gets underway.
Yeah, and since you brought up Kyle Brnovich, now Kyle Brnovich, Kobe Mayo would be a great matchup. How does Mayo go up against that knuckle curveball?
I love Brnovich a lot. Loved him since college, but Kobe Mayo is my guy. I think Kobe Mayo takes him like 415.
I think he crushes every fastball for a home run, and he misses at every knuckle curve.
Well, Eric Garfield, or really anybody that has the ability to set up cameras around there, you're listening to us now, please find a way to do that so that we have some stuff to talk about over the offseason. As we mentioned, there's not going to be any games, probably be very limited media access, but it will still be interesting to hear what comes out of this, even if it's not right away, because it was after fall instructs last year that we started hearing more about Jordan Westberg, more about Kyle Bradish, more about Joey Ortiz. So there's a chance that even if we're not directly hearing things over the next few weeks, that between now and really, spring training or the start of the 2022 minor league season, you're going to hear references to this player looked great in instructs and was working on this. So this will matter to some extent. Both for trying to get players further along their development and helping them recover from injuries.
Yeah. And I don't like overlook those either because, team talk, obviously they're going to push their agenda, but like we heard everything from Kyle Bradish and Joey Ortiz last year, and Kyle Bradish like really impressed early on and closed out the year really strong. I think he lived up to the hype, and Joey Ortiz lived up to every single bit of that hype before an unfortunate injury. So I'm definitely going to be on the lookout to see who's Steve Molesky's article of the top 3 players at instructional camp that showed out. Like I'm paying attention to that because they're not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think. They're not going to feed you. Trenton Craig looked really great out there. Like they're going to be completely honest with guys on who are going to make a big impact in 2022.
They'll at least be quiet on the guys that didn't impress, and they'll shout out the guys that did. And do we know exactly when this ends? Because maybe that's when we should line up another Matt Blood interview.
I think it was like sometime in November, a couple of weeks at least. So
very interesting.
Well, we have the full list over on our Twitter account at BSL on the Verge if you want to see the entire roster. But we've given you a rundown there of some of the players that are going to be there, as well as some of the trends that are taking place with the roster. So we'll move on now to what is going to be one of the big topics of the offseason, which is the players who are arbitration eligible and how that's going to affect the Orioles payroll. Now, last year when we were a minor league podcast that had to spend a lot of time talking about the major league team, we did an episode, actually a couple of episodes, on arbitration eligibility. And we're going to do the same thing this offseason, but one of the things we're going to try to do now that we've had a full minor league season is sort of show you where some of these players or where some of the decisions on arbitration eligible players could end up affecting prospects. And this is coming out as MLB Trade Rumors releases its annual salary projections of arbitration eligible players. Matt Schwartz at ML has created a model that MLB Trade Rumors has been running now for 11 years. And if you read coverage around the game on players who are arbitration eligible, and you see a salary projected next to it, chances are it came from MLB Trade Rumors. This model has sort of become the standard around the industry, especially at this time of the year when you're trying to figure out how teams are going to make their decisions based on payroll, financial flexibility, what they're willing to spend for the coming season. So just as an example of where you have an arbitration eligible player that right now has a spot that's likely to be occupied by a top prospect, Pedro Severino is projected to earn $3.1 million by MLB Trade Rumors next season, which is also widely expected to be Adley Rutschman's debut. That would seem, especially given that Severino's uneven performance in 2021, to suggest that he is a non-tender candidate. But I'm anxious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and I'll start with Nick.
Bye. If Pedro Severino gets $3.1 million from this team, I'm pulling out my old catcher's glove and I'm training every single day and I'm trying out somewhere. Like, he does not need to be back in this organization if you want to see improvements from your pitching prospects and young arms who are going to be in the major leagues next year. And I loved Severino last year, and I thought this was, the defensive first catcher that the Orioles brought in. And when he showed out offensively, like, I loved it. I thought it was a great story. I love just the attitude. I love the charisma out there in the field from him. Even this guy gets pounded. I don't know how he doesn't have like 8 concussions since he joined the Orioles, but he never misses a game. He gets right back up there behind the plate and continues to go. But the play is just not up to standard. So $3.1 million, I think, can get you a pretty good backup catcher. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those later on the show. 3.1 million can get you a couple good backup catchers. And so, yeah, he can be a non-tender candidate.
Yeah, seems like a fun guy to be around in the clubhouse, but not exactly doing the pitchers many favors. And yeah, $3.1 million, that's a lot of money for a guy that can barely catch, and his bat is disappointed of late. So definite non-tender for me.
Well, and there's been a lot of criticisms aimed at Severino's defense the last couple of years, and there are a lot of advanced metrics that you can look up out there that relate to catching that back that up. But I will put this one out there. In the shortened 2020 season, then again in 2021, Severino led the American League in pass balls. 5 in 2020, 10 in 2021. So that's one kind of traditional metric that goes along with everything else that you hear that's more in the advanced realm of defensive statistics, which is that Severino has struggled defensively behind the plate. And I'll go to Vivek's question here, which is, does Sevy have trade value given his average bat and exit velo numbers?
I don't think so. Not at that price. If it was a little bit less, maybe. But I bet he'll definitely sign on somewhere once he's non-tendered and he can sign for any price. But I don't think he has any trade value, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, if he kept up the offensive performance that he had from 2020, if he kept that going into 2021, maybe. And like you mentioned, the pass balls, and I could see the argument where someone could say, well, look at what the Orioles had pitching wise. But that's still an extreme number. And I still think that even with that pitching staff the Orioles rolled out, you could have done a better job behind the plate. And I realize that I'm saying this from my couch and having played catcher 1 year when I was 11 years old, but still, like, I don't see him having much trade value. Just like a DJ Stewart, I place him in that same category. Like, not a lot of trade value, maybe a flyer, a 16-year-old flyer from the Dominican, which I would do in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I think he was also behind the plate for like 66 wild pitches. So obviously those don't count against him, but sometimes a wild pitch can really be the catcher's fault. So
yeah, it's exactly right. 66 wild pitches when Severino was back there this year. Yeah, I don't see the Orioles tendering him a contract just because they have Rutschman so close to the major leagues. I think the only way that you would bring Severino back at that price was if there was something happened, and I'm not wishing for this. Please do not think I'm wishing for this. If something happened where we weren't going to see Adley Rutschman until the All-Star break, and you wanted to boost Severino's trade value a little bit by having him hit in the lineup every day and then flip him before Adley gets there. But that's not going to happen. That's a very admittedly far-fetched scenario. So we'll looking at the rest of this list, just running down some of the names that are arbitration eligible this offseason, aside from Severino: Trey Mancini, Anthony Santander, Jorge Lopez, Paul Fry, Tanner Scott, John Means. John Means is a virtual lock. You don't have to worry about that. And I'll be curious to hear what you guys say in our predictions later on, but I don't expect Means to go anywhere this offseason. But it's a little bit different story for Anthony Santander and Trey Mancini because both players have been attached to trade speculation for so long. And as we've discussed several times in the last few months, Santander could very well have been a trade candidate if not for the injuries that he dealt with in 2021. I'll just start with Nick or Bob on this one. Mancini and Santander. Mancini's projected to earn $7.9 million by MLB trade rumors. Santander at $3.7 million. Do you think it's a foregone conclusion that both players are offered contracts? But even if they are, do you think that there's a possibility one of them's moved this offseason?
This is the Orioles, so I can't say 100% that they will be offered a contract, but I'd say 95% chance. Yeah, I think they'll be tendered. It's up to debate what happens after that. They could easily be traded or signed to an extension, maybe that saves a little bit of money. I doubt that, but I definitely think they're trade candidates. But yeah, I do think they will be tendered contracts for 2022.
Yeah, Mancini, I think for sure. Like, if you're not going to pay Trey Mancini $8 million, then we might as well anticipate Bartolo Colon and like Tim Lincecum being the starting pitching candidates that come in this offseason. Like, you have to give Trey Mancini $8 million. Santander, that's a much tougher question. I mean, he's been in the major leagues for 5 years. He can't get on base. He can't stay on the field and stay healthy for long stretches of time. You have outfielders like Kyle Stowers, Robert Newstrom pushing for playing time. And I think, how much was he projected to get?
$3.7 million.
3.7. I feel like his production, I mean, he's putting up like Hanser Alberto and Renato Nunez level, like wins above replacement values. If you want to bring in another outfielder and wait on Newstrom and Kyle Stowers for a couple of months, that's fine. I'm all for that. But you can probably find someone who can put up equal production or maybe even a little bit better production compared to Santander for less than $3 million, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just think 3.7 million, it's not that much. And even if he's only just like around league average with the bet, or maybe even a little bit less, I think it's enough to at least warrant giving him a shot to rebuild some trade value. Maybe he starts off hot next season and then you trade him, or you just tender him and then you trade him a month from now.
That's kind of where I fall with Santander too, because I think that, if you got rid of him now, you would sort of be selling low. And I think that even holds true if you don't tender him a contract. Do I think that by July he's going to be the best option for the Orioles in right field? No. I think that it's only going to take a couple months for Kyle Stowers to catch up to him next year. But you do have an opportunity to bring him back healthy and to boost his trade value a little bit. And just going over some numbers this past season, and I'm looking off of Baseball Reference's version of WAR, had him at 0.2, 92 OPS plus, 720 OPS. None of those numbers are great. The one thing that I found odd was that he didn't seem healthy for most of the season. Then over the month of August, he looks like one of the best hitters in the American League. 309, 8 homers, 967 OPS, and then cooled off again in September. So I don't know if I know he had some injury issues again in September. So was August the only month he was healthy? Was that a statistical fluke? I don't really know what to make of it. But over the month of August, I was watching Santander and I thought, if he goes out and produces at about, a third, 2/3 of this production over the month of September, the Orioles can easily trade him this offseason. They can say, see, he was finally healthy the last 2 months of the year, and look how well he hit, but then he didn't repeat that in September.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a case of every player has a hot streak and a cold streak at some point, and his happened to be in August. I think at this point you can just assume he's right around a league average hitter. He's not going to walk. He can hit for some power. if he's healthy, he can play a solid corner outfield. But once he starts getting expensive, it's going to be hard to move him. So I think you got to do it now if you're going to do it.
Yeah, I just don't have any hope for him. I can't get excited about Santander anymore. Like Hayes, I went into the season still excited about in the potential, like if he stays healthy. But Santander, I just feel like it's been the same conversation for like 4 years now, and I've reached the point where focusing so much on the minor league game this year and just detaching myself from the major league roster, I feel like I've been able to, maybe too much in some areas, like detach myself emotionally so much from these guys that's just like, if Santander goes, like that's fine. And I think the roster is improved in 6 months from now. But yeah, if you do want to bring him back and see if he does regain some trade value, I'm fine with that as well. But I'm just not banking on it too much personally.
So Vivek chimes in again. Valleca has to be gone given Mateo and Urias group and Richie Martin. I would hope that the Orioles go into the season with more infield depth than Martin, Urias, Jahmai Jones, Jorge Mateo. But yeah, I think Pat Valleca, projected to make $1.3 million through arbitration, is a non-tender candidate.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. I mean, 1.3 million. Pat Valleca? Oh my gosh, that's highway robbery.
The only other name for me, like looking at this list, I mean, you said John Means, easy choice, like $3 million for John Means. That's a steal. No second thoughts there. Mancini and Santander kind of touched on. Lopez, I'm fine with giving him, was like just under $2 million projected arbitration numbers. I'm fine with giving him that as long as you keep him in the bullpen. I think that could be, I want to see what he does out of the bullpen over a full season. And I know this year, obviously, outside of baseball, he had a lot going on. So obviously that probably had some impact. The one that Tanner Scott as well, looking at this, Tanner Scott, I think $1 million, sure, bring him back. Even though I think he should have been traded at last year's deadline. No issues giving him $1 million. The one that I've seen mixed reaction on, like on social media, is Paul Fry, though. And I don't know what you guys think about Paul Fry, tendering him a contract.
I'm going to go.
Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
This has been on my mind for a while, and I'm not really speaking my own personal evaluation. I'm just trying to look inside the minds of the Orioles a little bit. Within a few weeks, Paul Fry went from being a trade candidate to being optioned in Norfolk. He really struggled over the summer. There's no question about that. But I have to question, was there any interest in Paul Fry at the trade deadline? Because if there was, why didn't you leave him up in the major leagues to try to work through these issues? Because if nothing else, it's got to look better to other teams to think, well, at least Paul Fry pitched in the major leagues all of last year. They opted him in Norfolk, and he struggled down there. So I don't know what to make of that. And in looking at that, I kind of feel like at $1.1 million, the Orioles are probably going to non-tender him. Look for some lower end major league free agent deals salary wise and some minor league free agents to fill that gap in the bullpen. But it's also entirely possible they just decide that because the starting pitching was so bad this year and starters weren't going deep enough into games, that Fry was simply worn out by mid-June. Mid-June, early July, Fry was worn out by then, and he couldn't get back on track because of the workload. I don't know. I mean, I'm really torn on that thought. My gut feeling right now is that he's probably non-tendered, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he's back.
Yeah, maybe Fry was fried late in the season. No, I think it'll be telling what the Orioles do with him, especially. $1.1 million is not a lot, so I think if they think he can bounce back, he'll obviously be tendered a contract. But if he's non-tendered, that means to me that they think he was pretty reliant on sticky stuff, and they don't think he's going to be able to regain that form that he had in the beginning of the year going forward. Tanner Scott, definite tender. $1 million is nothing for him. He walks a lot of guys, but when he's on, he's pretty good. Jorge Lopez is definitely interesting. $1.5 million. To me, I would definitely tender him and put him in a one-inning role out of the bullpen, let him ramp it up to upper 90s. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was not non-tendered, but signed for a contract closer to $1 million. I think they might think $1.5 million is a little too expensive for him, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting thoughts about Fry for sure. I mean, watching him in Norfolk, it was not pretty. 9 walks in 8 innings, an ERA of almost 8, and he's almost 30. He'll turn 30 next season, so I don't see the Orioles bringing him back. And maybe there was talks about, I feel like it was always grouped together, Paul Fry and Tanner Scott, when you talked about the trade deadline stuff. And I feel like all of that potential trade interest was in Tanner Scott and not Paul Fry. And so maybe that's why they said, let's just try to send you down to AAA and you can figure it out there. But $1 million for a 30-year-old reliever who couldn't figure it out in AAA, I'm fine looking elsewhere.
Yeah, Fry was optioned on August 30th. So about a month after the trade deadline, he's sent down. And I just, when that happened, I just remember thinking to myself, if you were remotely close on a trade with him just a few weeks ago, why isn't he finishing the year in the major leagues?
Yeah, the fact that he never came back up with expanded rosters and the pitching problems that the Orioles had, even barely finishing the season, getting enough innings. Yeah, that's pretty telling that he never made it back.
So that is the class of the players that are arbitration eligible this offseason. Obviously, we have a long way to go between now and when some big decisions are made for the 2022 season. So I'm sure we're going to rehash some of these discussions on some of these players. But that just kind of gives you a sense of what the Orioles are up against as far as arbitration eligibility, why they might make certain decisions, and how some prospects could be affected by that, namely whether or not they clear a roster spot at catcher early on with the expectation that Adley Rutschman will be in the major leagues at some point early in the 2022 season. So we'll move now on to our predictions, which if you're a regular listener of On the Verge, you know we do these every few months. We have off-season predictions, spring training predictions, regular season predictions, mid-season predictions. And most of the time it's Orioles prospect related, maybe some general baseball stuff thrown in. As usual, we wrote our predictions out in advance, but did not tell each other what we're going to predict. But you may also hear some random predictions along the way that we just came up with at the spur of the moment. And if you're watching us on live stream right now and you've got a prediction that you think we should take, go ahead and post it in the chat. And if we don't get to it before the end of our list, we'll take it at the end. But before we get into our predictions, we always like to recap what we got right and what we mostly got wrong the last time we did predictions. And Bob went back and listened to our mid-season predictions episode when we were joined by Locked On Orioles host Connor Newcomb. And Bob's going to go through those results for us now.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an enjoyable listen. This show is pretty good when you listen back to it. But at first, let's talk about our preseason predictions, because there were a couple that we have to check back in on, and especially the first one because I nailed it 100%. It was the home run leader. I had Mountcastle leading with 33 home runs. Ding, ding, ding. Zach just missed. He had Mountcastle with 32, and Nick had Mountcastle with 29. So we were all pretty much spot on the money there. MVO, me and Nick said Austin Hayes would be the most valuable Oriole, and Zach said Trey Mancini. Obviously, Cedric Mullins was the answer there. And we still have World Series predictions from before the season started that are live and well, at least everyone but mine. I said Padres over Yankees, which, wow. Nick said Braves over Rays. Braves up 2-0 on the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are who Zach had over the Twins. So you guys could still have your champions.
That's why I did that heavy sigh a moment ago. I just had to be reminded of that, that I picked the Twins.
I'm not even rooting for the Braves anymore. Yeah, here I am. I guess I am now. Go for it. Keep winning.
Yeah, they're not as fun without Acuna,
No,
to be honest. But,
exactly right.
mid-season. All right, we're caught up to our episode with Connor. I'll give his answers in here too, so he can be just as embarrassed as us. We had some non-40-man roster call-up predictions, and Connor said Dustin Knight would get the call-up. He was correct on that. Nick said Brett Cumberland. That must have been before Cumberland fell off a cliff. Zach said Dustin Knight and Brett Cumberland, so we can see the theme here. I said Dustin Knight, Manny Barreda, Marcos Duplan, Eric Handhold, Brett Cumberland, and Zach Jarrett. So I had the pitchers right, at least. I knew we would need a lot of scraps. Next was, will Mike Baumann make his Major League debut? Nick, Connor, and Zach said no. Zach said better chance of Kyle Bradish or Kevin Smith. I said yes, end of September out of the bullpen. Again, feel pretty good about the rare that I feel good about predictions, but this is one of those times. Most surprising Major League debut? Nick and Zach both said Robert Newstrom. Pretty close. I mean, he will probably be early next year. Connor said Mason McCoy. He noted that it was not due to his positive play, but just because desperation up the middle of the infield. And I said, Yusniel Diaz. Enough said. Grayson Rodriguez or Jordan Westburg, will they get another promotion? This is when Grayson was in Double A and Jordan Westburg was in High A Aberdeen. Everybody said no to Grayson except for Connor. He said he would get a couple cups of coffee in AAA, and we all said yes on Jordan Westburg except for me. I said no, even though I was close to changing my mind by the end. This is when I was still stuck in Elias doesn't promote people. He's very conservative, and I think we can all officially say that that is no longer the case. Next, we have who will have the most starts at second base for the Orioles in September. Me and Nick said Jahmai Jones, which was correct, but it was way closer than it had any right to be. And Zach and Connor said Ramon Urias. The actual results were Jahmai Jones had 13 starts at second base. Pat Valleca had 12 starts at second base, and Ramon Urias had 5.
That's a
Kobe
list.
Mayo, will he get? Yeah, it is. Kobe Mayo, will he get promoted from the FCL? Unanimous, no way, not going to happen. Well, turns out he did. He demolished Delmarva, and he'll start at Aberdeen next year. This is kind of relevant. Who will go to the Arizona Fall League? There's a lot of names here. I'll read them really fast. I said DL Hall, Anthony Servideo, Terran Vavra, Yusniel Diaz, Nick Vespi, Cameron Bishop, and Adam Hall. I was shocked to hear myself say Yusniel Diaz because I was surprised when they announced that, but it must have been when he was still hurt, and I thought it would be because he needed the at-bats, not because he was fighting for his life. Zach said Terran Vavra, Anthony Servideo, Kyle Stowers, ding, 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 Caden Grenier, Kyle Bronovich, Maverick Hanley, and Jordan Westburg. Connor said Westburg or Joey Ortiz, Terran Vavra, DL Hall, Adam Hall, Kyle Stowers, and Robert Newstrom. And Nick only said two. He cheated the game and said Cameron Bishop and Lamar Sparks. So he probably had the best percentage of people that were correct. Does Tanner Scott record a save? Me and Zach said yes. Spoiler alert, he did not. Nick said no because he will be traded at the deadline, and Connor said no flat out. So good for you. And we predicted the 2022 starting rotation. Connor said John Means, Bruce Zimmerman, a free agent in a third spot, Alexander Wells, Kyle Bradish, and Wade LeBlanc. I think he was kidding about that last one, but you never know. Nick said Means, Zimmerman, Alex Wells, free agent, and Tyler Wells going to move to the rotation. I'm not so sure about that after he was so dominant out of the bullpen. Zach said Means, Zimmerman, Alexander Wells, Spencer Watkins, free agent, and one of Kramer, Bauman, Smith. So he has a 7-man rotation. And I had Means, Zimmerman, free agent, Alexander Wells, and then one of Michael Bauman or Kyle Bradish. Most impressive 2021 draftee to end the year. We all had different answers, and we were probably all right. Actually, I was the most wrong. I had said John Rhodes. He was okay, but definitely not super impressive. Connor said Dante Williams. Zach said Colton Cowser, and Nick said Connor Norby. So pretty good. Which prospect will fall off the radar by season's end? I said Rylan Bannon. Nick said Yusniel Diaz. Zach said Yusniel Diaz. Connor said Yusniel Diaz, and Isaac Madsen. We were all pretty good on that. Future Closer Award, Zach had Zach Peak. Just going with the guy with the same name as him. I appreciate that. Nick said Nick Vespi. Just going with the guy who had the same name as him. I appreciate that. I said Bob Peralta. Ofelky Peralta. And Connor said Michael Bauman. And lastly, which prospect will gain the most traction or shoot up our rankings the most by season's end? I said Garrett Stallings. Zach said Gene Pinto. Connor said Hudson Haskins, and Nick said Kyle Bronovich. So Gene Pinto, that's the winner. Zach, right there.
Yeah, I mean, all four of those guys did move up a little bit. I am going to throw a few more prediction results out very quickly here, which is we did over-unders in the preseason, and these were based off of Fangraphs projections, and Nick read them off for us. Trey Mancini, over or under 25 home runs, we all took the over.
Looked like it was going to be.
Yeah, it was close. Anthony Santander, 29 home runs. I took the over. Nick and Bob took the under. And Nick was the one who pointed out that Santander is yet to play a full season. So I think he definitely tacked on the correct answer there. Ryan Mountcastle, 26 walks. We all said over. We were all correct.
He had, hold on, I just want to say,
Yep.
he had 41. So, I mean, that's really ridiculous over-under for them,
Yeah.
even as a guy who doesn't really walk.
So over-under, one player with 2 F4. We all said over, and Bob said 4 and got really close. It ended up being 3. Cedric Mullins at 5.3, followed by John Means at 2.5, and Austin Hayes at 2.4.
You'll
So,
never
Bob,
guess
you were
who was
close.
number 4 and 0.1 away from giving me the correct answer. Matt Harvey, 1.9.
So
That's
John
had-
Means. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I was saying I had John Means. If I was to guess one, my guy was probably John Means. If I were to go back and remember.
So speaking of John Means, 4.9 ERA was what Means was projected with preseason. We all took the under, and we were all correct. Dean Kramer, we all had over 0.5 F4.
That was for AAA Norfolk, right?
I wish. Keegan Aiken, 5 ERA. Bob and I had the under. Nick had the over. So Nick wins that one. Matt Harvey, 18 starts. Nick and I took the under. Bob took the over, but then tacked on the prediction that the Orioles would trade Matt Harvey, so his 18 starts would actually be accumulated somewhere else in addition to his starts in Baltimore. So not 18 starts as an Oriole.
I'm counting as a win.
Yeah, if not for the clarification, Bob would have won that one outright because he ended up with 28 starts.
Yeah, when you're doing predictions, say less.
Exactly.
That's 24 more starts than I anticipated Matt Harvey making on this roster. So
yes.
Yeah.
Good
He
job,
made
Matt.
28. Yeah.
Well, I also predicted back in spring training he wouldn't be on the opening day roster. So it was exactly 28 more starts than I had back in February. So Cesar Valdez, remember him? Cesar Valdez and Tanner Scott. Over under 6 saves. Nick and I took the over for both pitchers. Bob took the over for Tanner Scott, but the under for Valdez. And the actual result is that Cesar Valdez comes in with 8 saves, Tanner Scott 0.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking turn of events.
And now that we've had that recap, God, what a time capsule. Now that we've had that recap, we'll jump into our offseason predictions. We've got our prompts ready, and then Bob will take the first one.
Yeah. Will Trey Mancini be traded? That is a question we've been asking ourselves for a little bit now. So is this the time going into his final year under contract, potentially, as long as he's tendered? Let's go to Nick first.
Oh, man. So, I mean, I've said previously that the Orioles aren't in a position where they need to dump major league talent like Trey Mancini for minor league depth anymore. And I just feel like, as much as I love Trey, I feel like the headliner in a Trey Mancini deal would be like a Garrett Stallings level pitcher or a Jahmai Jones level hitter. And I don't think we need that in this organization. You can always add more guys like that, but like trading Trey Mancini for a guy like that, I don't see that happening. I don't want to see that happen. So I think I've settled on my final position here that I think he sticks around. But if let's play the game and say he is traded, which I think is a definite possibility. I keep getting drawn to these NL Central teams. Like Milwaukee needs some offense that's not Jackie Bradley Jr. And right now they have Rowdy Tellez and Daniel Vogelbach at like first base DH options. And I assume this throughout this whole exercise that like NL has a DH next season. And that's why I think I'm so drawn to these NL Central teams because so many of them are in a position to like compete next year, except for the Pirates. So any of those, but Milwaukee really sticks out. And I mean, maybe Baltimore Orioles West, the San Diego Padres, like I've in Padres shows that I listen to, it seems like Eric Hosmer is more than just like a guy who refuses to change his batting philosophy and his hitting approach. And there's a lot more to that behind the scenes. And if it's financially possible, they will definitely need to move on from Eric Hosmer this offseason. And so I feel like the Padres, like Manny and Trey out west, like I'd hate to see Trey go, but like I'm watching San Diego Padres every single night if that happens. So yeah, I guess my definite answer would be like Brewers. Why not?
I've thought a lot about this question. We talked about it a lot. And ultimately, I think that he will be on the opening day roster next year. I think Nick kind of hits a nail on the head with where the ceiling is for a trade at this point. I think it would be a little bit better version of the Jose Iglesias trade last year, which is a good trade, but not one that's going to dramatically alter the course of this rebuild. So I feel like that Mancini is going to end up back, at least for the start of next year.
All right. Since when did Michael Elias care what the fans think about a trade and whether it was fair or not? Get the pitchforks out because he's going to get traded, and it's going to be for a return that nobody is going to appreciate. That's for sure. I think $8 million is a lot of money for a 30-year-old first baseman. I can't see them being willing to pay that and keep him on the roster all year. So I put together a couple options for a trade. One was to the Detroit Tigers, who seem like they're kind of going on the other side of their rebuild here. I have us getting Ryan Kreidler, a shortstop third base prospect. He's kind of like a walks and home runs guy. Maybe he could be an option at third base for us next year. And a Tanner Colehep, who is a tall right-handed pitcher who gets ground balls and low exit velocity. So seems like an Elias guy. These guys are like in the teens of the Tigers' top 30 drafts prospects. And the other option was for the Mets. I had us getting Jalen Palmer, who's a versatile infielder, can play all over. He's 21 in high A, and he's had a pretty good season last year, as well as Junior Santos, another ground ball right-handed pitcher, 20 years old in low A. Had some bad luck with home runs in 2021, but both seem like guys that Elias would be interested in if he and when Trey Mancini is traded.
Yeah, fair. I think I agree with Zach that he will be on the roster next year. And I tried to take my heart out of this when I say that, but I don't think I can fully. So yeah, $8 million though for, like Bob mentioned, for the 30-year-old first baseman is kind of rough, but the Orioles fans need something. We need something. So I hope he's around next year. The next guy is Anthony Santander. Will he be traded? And if so, where? I'm going to say this. I don't know why another team would offer up many like prospects in return for Santander, but I'm just going to say like the Pirates. I don't know.
So Nick's frozen there for a second, but yeah, just jump in here on Santander. I'm going to say that he's not dealt, although I'm going to throw out one possible wild card, which is the Marlins. They were linked to him last offseason. They're reportedly going to be in the market for some offense this year, but we also know it's the Marlins. They're probably not going to be at the top of the free agent class. So you look at an organization that has a lot of pitching depth. I think that if there is a trade partner for Santander, it's Miami. But ultimately, I think he needs to come back, build up his value a little bit. That allows the Orioles to bide their time a little bit longer with Kyle Stowers. So I think Santander is on the opening day roster next year and is not traded in the offseason.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think he will be tendered a contract and be the starting right fielder until maybe May or June. He'll get traded then. But just say if he was traded, I also had the Miami Marlins as the option there. Although I did see something on Twitter that said the Cleveland Guardians are going to be looking for an offensive outfielder, and maybe he has a reunion in Cleveland. But I said he will be traded to the Marlins for either Nick Neidert or Braxton Garrett, who are kind of guys who got a taste in the major leagues this year and had some good numbers at AAA for them as well. They're 12th and 13th ranked prospects. And I said we'd also get another low-level guy and an international prospect as well thrown in there.
So you think Santander is traded?
I don't, at least not in the offseason. But if he was, it's definitely the Marlins.
All right, so Nick is back on. I want to hear the rest of his Santander to the Pirates take, and then we'll move on.
I don't know what you guys heard or not. I don't know. I don't think he does get traded. So that's why I just said like the Pirates or the Rockies seem like they're really bad at making trades. So if he is traded, why not one of those organizations? But I don't think he is traded.
Okay, so we clean sweep there. We don't think Santander is traded in the offseason. I'll move on to this, which is going to be a first that we've ever talked about, a hypothetical deal like this. Will a BSL top 50 Baltimore Sports and Life, where we do our rankings, will a Baltimore Sports and Life top 50 prospect be traded this offseason? And if so, who?
I'm saying yes, and I'm sticking with what I said last week in using the Diaz. And shout out to David Adams, I think it was, who reminded me in our Patreon WhatsApp group. that there was some discussion about in Eric Longenhagen's book, Future Value, that teams have been known to send prospects out to the Arizona Fall League to dangle them out as trade pieces. And I said last week that I think that could be what Michael Elias is doing here. And what do you know? Diaz is very hot to start the year. Reached base, 4 times in that first game. Hit a home run in the second game. I think they play tonight at 9:30 Eastern time. We'll see if he keeps that hot streak up. I just think that, Diaz is used to kind of sweeten the pot. If you do trade a Santander or Mancini and you can add Yusniel Diaz to that package, you're going to get a better return. So I'm going to say Yusniel Diaz, and I wouldn't be mad if Adam Hall is also traded as part of some package either.
Very interesting. I said yes as well, which is it's also going to spoil the next question that I had, which was, or will there be any surprising trades? And I think the Orioles trading prospects to buy a player would be pretty surprising. So I have us trading Zach Lothar, Adam Hall, and Yusniel Diaz to the Oakland Athletics for Sean Manaea, starting rotation option. The A's have a lot of arbitration eligible guys. They are cheap, almost as cheap as the Rays, and that might not be enough to get him. But this is what fans do, right? You always do what's going to favor your team the most. So yeah, I do think that we will trade at least one. If not what I said, then just a guy who needs a change of scenery, maybe a prospect for prospect challenge trade.
I'm going to go no. But I do think that if one is traded, it's in the scenario that Nick mentioned where you're trying to get a little bit more out of that trade for Anthony Santander or Trey Mancini. So you throw a Yusniel Diaz or an Adam Hall in there. And I thought about this a lot before we went on the air, and I just ended up settling on no, that I don't think we're going to see a top 50 prospect dealt this offseason.
What if we're talking about dangling prospects out? What if this is why Kyle Stowers was sent to Arizona and the team does like Santander enough to wait it out for Kjerstad and Kauser and others, and Stowers is the trade bait being dangled out?
That's definitely a thought. We better be getting something good back. That's all I'm saying.
I hope not, but that thought just crossed my mind, and now I'm scared.
I don't think so, but yeah, that's not impossible. So I guess I will transition into my question of will there be any surprise trades? And like I said, the surprise trade equals Orioles buying somebody with prospect capital or selling a guy like John Means or Cedric Mullins, which they shouldn't do. What do you guys think? Let's go with Zach first.
Well, I guess in that respect, my answer is probably no, because I was going to say that I think Cole Sulser is traded this offseason. But that's really not that surprising from the position that the Orioles are in, I guess. So no, but that's just a random name that I'll throw out there.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. I think if Mancini's traded, that won't be a surprise. If you trade John Means, you're not going to have any major league arms. And I think Cedric Mullins, the price tag is just going to be way too high. And I love what Mullins did, but as another organization, is that a smart business move to trade that high price tag meet that high price tag for a guy like Mullins after just one season of production? Probably not. But I don't see any big surprises unless it is that Kyle Stowers deal that I just mentioned that I need to get out of my head now. I'm sorry I brought that up.
Yeah, I already said yes because I'm saying the Orioles are going to trade for one of the Oakland A's starting pitchers. But as far as Mullins, it means there's no way. I think it's more likely that John Means is extended before he's traded, and Mullins, he's pre-arbitration. I don't think Elias is going to trade anybody that's pre-arb. I think you got to wait till that first arb 1 year before you start thinking about what Mike Elias is going to do. So.
The next question here is, will a current Oriole or Orioles prospect receive a contract extension over the offseason? We'll go Zach first.
I'm going to say that it won't happen in the offseason because the CBA negotiations slowed down everything else this offseason. So that pushes any contract extensions into spring training. Now, I am willing to hedge a little bit here and say that I could see an extension or two in spring training, but I don't think we'll see one between now and when pitchers and catchers report.
Yeah, I pretty much agree wholeheartedly with that. I said no, but if John Means comes in looking really healthy and good in spring training, then maybe they sign him to a 4 or 5 year extension at that point, but that is not the offseason. So, no.
Yeah, I said maybe Mancini, but other than that, no. I do agree that I feel like even just going on making predictions like we're doing is kind of tough because we have no idea what that CBA is going to look like, or if we're going to have a start to the season next year. So it is really tough to think about roster construction going into next season. But yeah, I don't see the Orioles making any super big moves. If Vivek says 10-year deal for Adley Rutschman, I would love that. And I think it would be smart. I love that teams like the Rays go after Brandon Lau. Shout out to Brandon Lau, former neighbor of mine. I love that he got that money. But I love that Fernando Tatis Jr. got that money from the Padres and those young prospects getting big contracts. And I wish the Orioles would do that for Adley. But this offseason with the CBA stuff, I don't see that happening.
So speaking of CBA stuff, that transitions to our next question. Will service time manipulation be eliminated or curtailed by a new CBA, or will the current process stay in place? And I'll start with Bob on this one.
I'm an optimist, so I'm going to say yes, it will be eliminated. I think this has to be like almost the number one issue right now. Maybe not for the major leaguers, that it doesn't matter anymore. So hopefully they're looking out for the young guys that are coming up behind them, and this will be dealt with. I just think it's better for everyone involved. I think it's better for the players, obviously, and it's better for baseball in general. So yes.
Yeah, I would like to say yes, but the opposite of being that super optimistic that Bob is, my first thought was like that announcement of guaranteed housing starting in 2022. Is that hopefully what would be like the first, like that's the first big victory? And then do we see some maybe smaller victories for minor leaguers over the next month or so? And then when they get to the negotiation table, they're going to say like, look, we gave minor leaguers all these great perks. Their lives are going to be so much improved starting next year. So teams are going to get to keep that service time manipulation, that extra year of control, if you will. I wonder if that would be the case. That's kind of dark thinking, I think, on my end, but I hope that that's gone and teams will have a system will be in place where teams say Adley Rutschman is ready on opening day last year or this past season, you bring him up and there's no financial barriers to worry about there. But I don't know if I see that changing.
Yeah, being cynical is never a bad idea when you're talking about Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I started to kind of go in Nick's direction a little bit, but I have a hard time envisioning that this isn't changed in some way, shape, or form. Unless there are larger issues in play that we don't realize right now. I do think that there's going to be a solution that ends up not satisfying everybody because that's just the nature of this. And I don't know that you're necessarily going to see something that, brings all results in every top prospect in the game that's major league ready starting the year in the majors next year. But I just can't imagine the status quo stays in place.
Oh, that's me. I'm next. All right. So which Orioles prospects will appear in major outlets top 100 list over the offseason? Let's go with Nick first.
I said Adley Grayson, D.L. Hall, Colton Cowser, and Gunnar Henderson. I think that's probably all we're going to see. I don't think you see Westberg in like an offseason update or like a February or January preseason update. Maybe with some promotions as the season starts, you see Westberg creep in. But I think it's just like Baseball America. I think it's pretty obvious that Baseball America is not going to include him in their top 100 to begin the year after a conversation with Kyle Glazer. And then Kobe Mayo, I think Mayo and Westbrook definitely deserve it, but I think Mayo, because he's so young, it probably takes a little while for other outlets. I know MLB Pipeline doesn't really like to go after the young kids on their top 100 list. So Westbrook by the end of the season, for sure. Mayo possibly, but to begin the year, I think it's just those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I have.
Yeah, I agree. The top 5 off of our current list, and I think the top 5 for most lists on the Orioles. So Rutzman, Rodriguez, Hall, Henderson, Cowser. I don't think Baseball America has Cowser in its top 100 right now. So it remains to be seen if he gets there, but he'll still appear on enough lists this offseason for that to be a correct answer.
Yeah, so I think the major outlets are what? ESPN, Fangraphs, Baseball America, and what was the other one? MLB Pipeline, maybe Baseball Prospectus. So 5 major outlets. I said we'll get the big 5 on pretty much all of them except Baseball America with Cowser. And I think you'll see Jordan Westberg pop up on 1 or 2 of them at the very back end, and maybe a Kobe Mayo in like one of them at number 99. Just give some love to some more guys.
I mean, Baseball Prospectus, no dig at them, but like they like to include Adam Hall, like top 5 Orioles prospect for like the last 2 years. So if you're going to find more Orioles on that list, Baseball Perspectives would probably be that list. Let's see. Are we on to the free agent signings here?
Yes.
All right.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So some free agent names we like. We'll start with the pitchers. We'll go Zach first.
I'm going to throw out a name that has some Mike Elias connections because he's a former Houston guy. I'm going to say that Vince Velasquez somehow ends up an Oriole over the offseason. I don't know that he's going to actually be part of the opening day rotation, but my guess is that you see him in there somewhere. I'm also going to go ahead and go with a name that I was hoping the Orioles would target last offseason and say Chris Archer, who looked good early on this year before having an injury. So I would throw him in there, and then I feel like they're going to go out and they're going to get at least one pitcher that should actually be in the rotation where you don't have to worry about, when they make it out of spring training. And I'll just say that guy is Brett Anderson.
Interesting. Vivek says Tyler Anderson, so we're going to get an Anderson one way or the other, apparently. I said we will sign 2 starting pitchers, one of them more like a lock for middle of the rotation or maybe the number 2 starter. I said Michael Pineda. I tried to give he had a really good season actually in the end, ERA just above mid-3s. But I try to give contracts. I don't know what these guys are going to get, but I just tried to estimate 2-year deal for around $20-25 million for Pineda. And then I said Aaron Sanchez on a 1-year deal, kind of the flyer guy who could maybe be the number 4 starter. He came back from injury later in the season and looked pretty decent when he did. So those are my pitchers. I don't think we'll sign any relievers. I think there's enough options there in-house.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people want Marcus Stroman and or Eduardo Rodriguez. Those would be great options, but I don't know if the Orioles are going to pay those price tags this offseason. I had Michael Pineda as well. I've always enjoyed watching Michael Pineda. He doesn't walk anybody. So that's someone that like I would watch the major league roster if Michael Pineda was pitching that day. I really like John Gray as well, but I feel like the Rockies just gave Antonio Senzatella like $60-something million. And I read that they wanted to bring John Gray back. So if Senzatella's getting $60 million, like John Gray is going to get paid as well by the Rockies, which they can pay him like $50 million if they want to.
$100 million contract coming up.
At least. I know Chris Stoner mentioned Zach Davies, and I've been thinking about that as well. I kind of like that idea. I don't hate it, but I just feel like he's kind of like a ticking time bomb, and when he implodes, it could get really ugly. But I'm going to go Alex Wood as another one. I feel like that's a name that is always popping up as a potential option. He's a solid rotation piece. He went 10-4 with a 3.83 ERA and was worth 2.5. Fangraphs wins above replacement this year with the Giants. So strikeouts were up. Walk rate is low as usual. That could be a good option as well to hang out in the middle of the rotation.
Another Chris Stoner favorite.
So we'll go now to the infield, and I'll start with Nick on this one.
Infield, there's some other guys that I really love, but I said give me Andrelton Simmons as the shortstop bridge option. I don't think he gets anything close to $10 million that he got last offseason. And I know the bat's been slipping. It's not that great over the last couple of years, but he doesn't strike out like at all. Maybe being a hitter's park will help. I'm not too worried about flipping him. I just think the defense is still pretty solid as far as like advanced metrics still seem to kind of like him. So that's I think a good bridge option, at least. I don't think we're going to recycle through the Jose Iglesias or Freddie Galvis again. So give me Andrelton Simmons to shore up that infield defense.
I think we will recycle. I have a signing Jose Iglesias for 1 year, a couple $1 million. Let him actually play the field this time, full season. It's not going to be great, but he at least serves the purpose of buying time for our infield prospects to come up. And then, just like Vivek says, I've been on the Kyle Seager or Eduardo Escobar train for quite a while now. And I think we're going to sign Eduardo Escobar for 2 years, around $15 million. And he'll play third base every day for us until someone pushes him off.
I'm going to go with what Nick said and predict Andrelton Simmons. I think he fits the mold of what Mike Elias has already talked about, which is the type of player who needs to rebound his stock offensively. Baltimore is a place where he can probably do that because, hitter's park, he'll have good hitters around him, and he makes that position better defensively for your young shortstops. And if I'm comparing him to Iglesias at this point, Iglesias' defense slipped off in 2021. And you can factor that up, it's whatever you want to chalk it up to, a 1-year fluke, whatever. But I think that Simmons gives you the steadier glove. I predicted Eduardo Escobar a while back when a listener put us on the spot and asked us to say what I think the 8 starting positions plus the DH would be 1 year from the date we recorded that episode. And as much as I would love to stick with Eduardo Escobar, I somehow sense that he ends up out of the Orioles' price range. However, I have a player that I think is meant to be an Oriole, and that's Brad Miller. Plays all over the place, left-handed power, strikes out a lot, but can also draw walks. Bring him into Camden Yards. He could fill in at all 4 infield spots, the outfield occasionally, and he'll hit for 20, 25 home runs at Camden Yards.
Yeah, we could also trade for Paul DeYoung and accomplish the same thing there too.
That works. I was looking for like those versatile guys, and I feel like Marwin Gonzalez's name kept sticking around, but I hope to God it's not Marwin Gonzalez.
Agreed. I was thinking the same thing. All right, so we all said Pedro Severino is going to be non-tendered, and I guess they could go with Nick Truffaut and Austin Wynn's combination until Adley's ready, quote unquote. But I doubt it. I think they're going to sign a guy. So who's it going to be? Let's go with Zach.
I'm going to stick with the guy that I've been saying here for a while, and it's going to be Sandy Leone. He fits the bill exactly what the Orioles need. Good defensive catcher, can work well as a pitching staff, good pitch framer, and he's actually just coming off of serving the exact same role in Miami. Young pitchers down there. They had Jorge Alfaro, who was a former top prospect, behind the dish for them, but then Leone was sort of that veteran guy that could, call a good game, throw out base runners, catch the ball. I think it's going to be Leone. And I will say that this year, the catcher's market is pretty weak when you get past Yan Gomes. But it is the market that is tailor-made for the Orioles because probably a lot of low-cost veteran options that can play the position well defensively. But I think Leone's the guy.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But I had basically whoever will sign the cheapest deal out of Robinson, Chirinos, Yan Gomes, Sandy Leone, that whole collection there. It might even be my minor league signing pick. Maybe they'll just sign like 3 guys in minor league deals and have them battle it out in spring training.
Yeah, I probably see that as being the more likely option. I thought about just saying no, like to a catcher and saying it's going to be like Shufo, but I just don't know how much he's going to be able to hit. Roberto Perez was a name that I saw on the list. I mean, I like his defensive abilities. I know he can't really hit that well, but I mean, he seems like a grizzled veteran type. And I feel like if you're going to bring in somebody, like I want a proven veteran, like a Sandy Leone. I want that type of guy behind the plate with Adley. Another guy too, maybe someone worth looking at, I don't know, was Manny Pena of the Brewers. I don't know. I was reading something about him the other day that I think was interesting that when he hit a line drive or fly ball, like the numbers is big exit velo and good data there on the batted balls, except the ground ball numbers were kind of through the roof this year. And so that kind of like hurt him a little bit, but he's a decent offensive catcher with home run pop and decent glove as well. So it's not a super sexy option, but it'd be an improvement over Severino or Wins. So there's 2 other names that I could see as possible options. I do want to shout out, I think, was Talking Birdie podcast. What's up, guys? I think it was it Josh, the third co-host, the newer co-host there, Josh, Out of State Orioles on Twitter. You guys know him for following him. If you're listening to this podcast, you know him. I think he threw out the name Austin Hedges as like a trade piece from Cleveland, and I would not be mad at that either. So shout out Josh in that prediction for a catcher position.
Yeah, I think Roberto Perez has a $7 million option for the Guardians, and Austin Hedges has like a $5 million option, but the Guardians are pretty cheap, so they might decline that. Who knows?
Was that? We'll go to next one's minor league signings. I've got none. I did not have enough time to look through this. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of them for sure, but I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. If you guys have any names to throw out there.
I just think I didn't give anyone specific, but I think we'll definitely have a catcher or 2. And I think they'll bring in a bunch of arms like that could be relief guys, just like they did last year. The Berettas, the handholds. I know they weren't minor league signings, but Connor Green, someone with upside that they can shove in AAA to start the year out of the bullpen, and then hopefully, if they're needed, they can come up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where a lot of your filler for the bullpen is going to come in, is probably through minor league signings. That's why I didn't really focus on relievers when we talked pitchers earlier. And I also think you could see another infielder brought in on a minor league deal just to see what they have. Because I think one of the things that the Orioles didn't really prepare for last year was that their second base depth, which they seem to have a lot of going into camp, wouldn't really materialize during the regular season. So I don't think it would hurt to have one or two more options at shortstop at least, just to see what you have, even if these are guys that get cut in camp and never actually appear in a regular season game with the organization.
Yeah. I just think overall, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you guys in that the Orioles are going to spend enough money to improve this roster?
3 out of 10.
That's fair.
4.
Yeah, I'm probably in line with you guys as well, which stinks, but yeah, I think that's the position we're in still.
Absolutely.
Well, one route could be the Rule 5 draft. Do the Orioles once again utilize the Rule 5 draft? And if so, do we see 1 or 2 selections?
Until, yeah, exactly. Until they prove otherwise, always yes with the Rule 5 and the Orioles. I said only 1 this year. They did 2 the last couple of years. I'll say they'll take 1 pitcher. They have the number 1 pick in the Rule 5 draft. They will pick a nice pitcher and hopefully have a similar result to Tyler Wells.
Yeah, you're definitely going to leave a roster spot open for that. The Orioles will definitely use it, having the number 1 overall pick. Ideally, I'm assuming CBA is not going to mess with that. We're like, 5-6 weeks probably away from that Rule 5 draft. And so I'm going to say yes, but I will defer. There's a comment from Vivek. I'm going to defer to Vivek. Follow him on Twitter, and I'm sure he'll be tweeting out his thoughts on guys. I know he's been doing a ton of research. I'm going to leave it up to him as to who that will be as we get closer, but we're definitely going to take one. And I do agree with Bob. A pitcher makes the most sense there.
I'm going to say yes, and that they take 2, because that has been the track record the last couple of years under Mike Elias, is to go with 2 players in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft. And as long as that option is available to them, I think they take 2. But yeah, picking with the first pick in the Rule 5 draft, I think you definitely take at least 1.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So the only other way we haven't talked about acquiring players, I think, is the waiver wire. And, this is a time of year where guys are going through waivers right now as teams have to get down to their 40-man roster, having players come off the 60-day injured list, And will the Orioles utilize that space once again to get a guy a la Cole Saucer or Jorge Mateo? What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I feel like that's like the daily, like Michael Elias checklist. Check email. It's like coffee, check email, check the waiver wire. And so I think John Muley said it best. Like the Rays, I think, had a lot of guys on their IL, and they're going to have to create a lot of rosters. They're going to have to do a lot of roster construction as soon as the World Series is over. And so definitely watch for them. Watch who is cut or DFA'd off their roster. But yeah, I couldn't give you any names. But for sure, I think the Orioles will be very, very busy on the waiver wire trying to find that next Chris Ellis, who was a pleasant surprise to end the year.
Oh, yeah, they'll definitely be on the waiver wire. And I think the Rays are one of the teams they're going to be looking at just because, there is, like what John Muley talked about, having to get players off the IL. And they're a team that we know maneuvers their roster a lot over the offseason. So they're one of the teams I think the Orioles will be looking at heavily. But, yeah, expect the Orioles to be active on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. And I also said the Rays, just anyone that they try to pass through waivers, we'll pick them up and see what they have. And we'll end up with 10 guys that were on the Rays 40-man about a month ago.
Next question is, who is the new Major League hitting coach? And then AAA manager, AAA pitching coach. We'll go Bob first.
I'll do the easy ones first. I think, obviously, AAA manager will be Buck Britton. I'm assuming he will accept that promotion. Same with Justin Ramsey for the AAA pitching coach, which is vacant. And Major League hitting coach, I'm staying all AA, Bowie, all in-house. Ryan Fuller making a huge jump really quickly to Major League hitting coach. I just think he's really good at what he does. He's proven that time after time. He was the hitting coordinator, so obviously they have a lot of faith in him. And a lot of these guys that he's been dealing with the last few years are on their way up. They're getting closer. So I think they want some familiarity there. And I don't see them bringing in a traditional guy, old white guy to lead the hitting coach charge. So I'm going with Ryan Fuller.
I'm going to go with Buck Britton as manager at Norfolk and Justin Ramsey as pitching coach. So Bob and I agree there, but I am going to go as a different in-house option hitting coach and say that the next Orioles hitting coach is Tim Gibbons. He's out in the Arizona Fall League now, was just at Norfolk last year. I think he moves up to the major leagues. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, I think you guys hit it. I think these guys definitely just do like naturally move up like the players do. And it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be interested to see who these new guys are that fill in the lower level spots, because they're definitely going to be guys that we've never heard of. That's the hard thing with this question is they're going to be guys we've never heard of. They're going to be young. They're going to be innovative. They're going to be out of some academy or some like D2, D3 college that made huge gains. And they're going to be bright young minds. I think that's the key thing here is that these guys, to speak with Ryan Fuller, it's like it's a community, I feel like, of these coaches. And so you're not going to see those older hitting coaches come through at all. So definitely good picks there. The LSU football coach is available. I love Edo, and I feel so bad. I hate that LSU was giving up on him, but I don't know how much he can help as far as hitting or pitching goes. Shout out to Edo, I guess.
So turning back to prospects, what pitchers do we hear rumors of velocity increase? And then for hitters, who do we hear rumors of improving / adding muscle? And I'll start with Bob here.
All right, so I went with Mickey Janis for pitchers. I think he's going to get that knuckleball up about 2 miles an hour. No. I wrote Drew Rom as a wish list. I don't actually think it's going to happen, but God, it would be nice if he did. And Zach Peak, as well as Kyle Bernovich. I know we talked to Zach Peak, and he had mentioned he's focusing on his fastball. He mentioned command, but if you're focusing on your fastball that much, I imagine velocity will be a part of it. And Kyle Bernovich, I think he's another guy that could really be, like Drew Rom, more valuable with a little bit more faster fastball to go with the other breaking ball stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and offensively, sorry, the hitter side, I went with Daryl Hernandez, which I've been talking about, which would be a great possibility there as a breakout candidate, and I think adding muscle would be a part of that. And Michel Desone, I think he's a really skinny guy. He could use a little bit of good muscle there to increase his power potential.
Yeah, I feel like it is going to be Rom, at least, is the guy who there's going to be the most discussion about, because he's been so quietly under the radar all this time, I feel like, and he dominated high A, dominated in double A for that stretch there. And so there's going to be, and that's already been a talking point. Personally, I don't know if he needs to increase the fastball velocity. I just don't see it happening at this point as well, but I just don't think it's a priority for him, to be honest. I would say probably the name that I took this question as like, who are the two guys that the organization really feeds us a lot of information about, is I'll add the Joey Ortiz and Kyle Bradishes of next year. And I do think that it's going to be like names that kept popping up to me were like Reed Trimble, being the second round draft pick who didn't get to play that much, but they like his versatility. I feel like that's a guy who could grow into that body a little bit. Hudson Haskins as well was another hitter that I feel like is a name that the Orioles really push out. And could be, he looks like a guy, I didn't get to see him live, like in person, but he looks like a guy who could fill out the jersey a little bit more. And for pitching, it's going to be, this is a tough one. Peak is a really good answer. But I don't know. I'm going to say Brandon Young. I feel like that's a name that they work with a lot. Could he add fastball velo? Probably. He's a big body guy. So I think that's a name that we hear a lot about this offseason into 2022.
Yeah, that's my exact pick for pitcher is Brandon Young. And I think that's, we talked about this a little bit recently, and we talked about when John Mioli's on, but I think start getting aboard Brandon Young hype train, because we're going to be hearing a lot about him between now and the start of next season. As far as the latter point goes about who we're going to be hearing the most hype about among hitters, I'm going to go with Trimble. I just think that you're looking at a guy that's listed at 6'1", 180 right now. There probably is a little bit of room to grow into that body, as Nick mentioned. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot about, tapping into that raw power, kind of like what we heard with Jordan Westberg last year. Is can they tap into that raw power? And I think that Trimble is going to become that guy over the course of the offseason that you're hearing from the Orioles. Power stroke looks great. Look for a big year from him.
If there's rumors about Sammy Basayo increasing his power, I'm buying the jersey tomorrow. I don't care what country I have to order it from. I'm getting that one.
DH Gate has great deals. That's where I got my Yusniel Diaz jersey, so didn't lose that much money.
So we got one prediction prompt here from a listener, Adi. Does the draft order starting in 2023 change to a lottery like the NBA instead of records due to the new CBA? I will start with Nick on this one.
I don't think so. I don't think baseball goes that extreme. I don't even know if I really like the NBA lottery style system. It definitely, I get the point that it kind of prevents teams from tanking like this. I think they'll go other directions to try to avoid this situation, like what the Orioles are doing, these extreme tanks. But I feel like it's not going to mess with the draft. I'd probably say no on that.
I think there will be changes. I don't think it's going to be like an NBA type lottery. I think they're going to do something though to try to mix up so teams aren't so guaranteed of how high they're going to pick. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I think it'll be something, but it will start in 2023, not this coming off season.
I'm going to predict that the draft stays exactly the same in the next CBA, at least as far as how the order is determined, because I think that by the time you sort out everything that is going to be the big bargaining chip among the players and the owners, that one's going to be left on the table for the next CBA. So I think it stays exactly the same.
Yeah. I'd be curious. You're talking about the draft. I'd be curious to see if they make changes to the international side of things and if they institute an international draft. I know that's probably not going to be part of like the CBA negotiations there, but since we're talking about the draft, that would be something that I think they should implement.
Yeah, listening to the Baseball America podcast, that is coming in pretty soon. I think they expect it in the next couple of years. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so a question here from Sim Contribute. Companion question to draft lottery is minimum salary expenditure.
Will there be a salary floor? There's definitely not going to be a salary cap. I could see them having a salary floor of like 70 million at the most. If they do it, I don't think it will be very high just because baseball teams like to claim poor. So my official answer is no, but if they do, it won't be very high.
Yeah. It's a good idea again in general, but I'm not anticipating anything drastic as far as like just thinking about Major League Baseball. Like you said, being pessimistic when you're looking at Major League Baseball is a good thing. And just because Major League Baseball doesn't know what's good for Major League Baseball. And so I don't see them implementing a salary floor like that as well, even though, that would probably be better for the game, forcing these teams to spend their money. But I just don't see that happening so quickly this year, at least.
Yeah, if the owners wanted to put a major bargaining chip before the players, they could put the salary floor in. But something tells me they're not going to do it. As much as I would like to see it, I just don't think it's going to happen. Over under 30%, Michael Gibbons / Andrew Miller goes back to Baltimore in a 1 year plus a player option. I'm taking the under on both.
Absolutely agree. I mean, it would be interesting to see Andrew Miller back when we should have re-signed him to a longer deal after we traded for him. But yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I would love to have them back and trade them again for outstanding prospect capital again. That'd be great. But no, I'm good with sending up Michael Gibbons and Andrew Miller off into the sunsets elsewhere.
I'm going to throw out an impromptu prediction prompt here. Will Buck Showalter manage in 2022, and if so, where?
Yes, and it will be a big mistake because I think the game has passed him by, but I do think he's going to get a shot. Let's say, what are the openings? St. Louis Cardinals, Buck Showalter. No, they definitely want a more analytically driven guy. I'll just say the Padres. I think it might be Ron Washington, but let's just give him the Padres to be Orioles West even more so, and I don't think it's going to help their cause.
Yeah, I don't see him. I wonder if like Tommy Lasorda found success this year, and apparently like Tim Anderson said he wants Lasorda back in Chicago next year, which blows my mind. But again, I'm not a White Sox fan. I don't pay attention. So I mean,
La Russa.
Yeah, I guess. Did I say Lasorda?
Lasorda. That would be tough. That would be tough.
La Russa. There you go. I don't know. Yeah, which blows my mind. Which I feel like at the same time, like maybe opens the door for a Buck Showalter, but I'd say no. And I think I saw today, I think it was Britt Giroli actually who said that the Padres are thinking about, or they are going to interview Mike Schilt, who the Cardinals just let go. So I think between him and Ron Washington, you're probably going to find someone other than Buck Showalter to keep that train going out in San Diego.
Buck Showalter will be back next year, and it will be with the Mets, because where is there a weak baseball operations department right now? The Mets. Who needs to make a big splash? The Mets. Who would tweet endlessly about hiring Buck Showalter? Steve Cohen.
Or who would tweet endlessly about it's going to be Billy Bean, Theo Epstein, or David Stearns for sure. And then it's already been rolled out, all three of them.
Yeah, the Mets are going to Mets. That's just how it's going to be forever and ever.
So any other impromptu predictions you guys want to throw out there?
I think I'm all predicted out, but if you got any more, I'll give it a shot.
I think we touched on a lot of the major topics there.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting. And it should, 2 weeks from now, basically, we should start seeing some activity, hopefully, happen. So once the World Series ends.
Who's going to win these series that are going on right now in the World Series? Updated picks. I'll say Astros beat the Red Sox, Dodgers come back, beat the Braves, and then Astros over Dodgers once again in the World Series.
I'm probably going to, because I don't want it to happen, I'm going to say the Red Sox find a way to win. Even though I really don't want that to happen. I'm going to say the Dodgers close out. So I'm going to say Red Sox, Dodgers, and Dodgers take it in 7 games. Mookie Betts, the World Series MVP.
I predicted Dodgers would win it all preseason, so I will stick with them even though they are down 2-0 now. Somehow I think the Red Sox end up winning the ALCS, and then I will take Dodgers over Red Sox in 5.
And Vivek is asking, how many games did the Orioles win next year? Early predictions here, guys. What do you think?
I'm going to say, without having any clue of how they're going to attack this roster in this offseason, I'm going to say with confidence that, I don't know, like a over-under win total, but I will say they do not lose 100 games. I feel 100% confident in saying that.
Yes, that is my prediction for now. They will not lose 100 games, and then when we do spring training predictions in a few months or regular season predictions, I'll check back in with an exact win total.
I already made a $20 bet on the Baltimore Sports and Life message board with somebody that we will not lose 100 games next year, and I'm going to one-up it right now. We will not lose 90 games. 73-89 is our record in 2022, and we are excited about contending in 2023.
If the Orioles don't lose 90 games next year, get ready for endless analysis on their run differential and how it's all a fluke.
Yeah, exactly.
The Orioles win too many games too fast. We might be out of a business over here with the prospect focus. So if they want to extend this for another year and you guys keep checking out these hot prospects, I'm fine with that as well.
Yes, exactly. So that's everything for our show tonight. Continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. Check out Baltimore Sports and Life for the latest articles next week. Bob will not be with us next week because he's going somewhere and he's not allowed to say where.
Well, you can say it. I'm on headphones.
Okay, yeah. So Bob's going to be on vacation with his family next week. Nick and I and maybe a co-host will be on the air next week. Check out at BSL on the Verge for Twitter for updates there on who will be joining us. But Bob, before you head off on vacation, anything you want to say before you're back in 2 weeks?
This will be the only month where I miss 2 shows. That's guaranteed. I do not like missing shows. I get FOMO for sure. So can't wait to come back. Can't wait to listen to you guys again next week. And hopefully it's a great show, which I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. If you have any ideas for things you want to listen to, like DM us, email us, join the Patreon group, and drop it in the WhatsApp group. Let us know.
Yep, absolutely. So hit us up if you got any ideas for next week or for the off season. We'll be recording weekly, just as a reminder. So be sure to continue to listen. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On the Verge.